Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of the Motivational Millennial podcast. Our guest today is Dan Lok, who will share with us his rags to riches story and how he overcame challenges to eventually become a multi-millionaire and serial entrepreneur. Then stay tuned for the after show, and Blake and I will share our biggest takeaways.
Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to the Motivational Millennial podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our motivational millennial guest today is Dan the Man Lok. He is a multi-millionaire, serial entrepreneur, and an international best-selling author. Dan is considered one of the world's leading experts in internet marketing and is referred to by many as the Millionaire Mentor. Dan's inspirational story of an immigrant-turned-millionaire business leader has attracted a global following and sparked a new generation of entrepreneurship and business savviness, providing youth with a clear direction for success and growth. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And we'd love for you to start by sharing what you're up to and why you're so passionate about it.
What I'm up to? Wow, I'm up to, my mission now is to impact a million entrepreneurs worldwide. This is something that I set a goal to accomplish before, and I don't have a deadline for that. I don't have like, I'm going to do it in 5 years or 10 years. But this is something that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to, because I feel that I'm the happiest when I hang out with entrepreneurs. And I do know that as an entrepreneur that you can impact many people's lives. As a business owner, that you impact your employees' lives, you impact your customers' life, also your vendors' lives. So I know that if I can impact a million entrepreneurs, that 1 million can go out and impact many, many more. So that I want that to be my legacy. I think they're creative. I don't have a lot of friends who are in the kind of employee quadrant that we don't have a lot in common. I do have a lot of employees and I like them a lot. But when it comes to like talking about life or business, we just have a different perspective. And so with entrepreneurs, they are creative. Entrepreneurs are creators, very often very resourceful, out of the box thinking. So I like to brainstorm and mastermind and learn from them and bounce ideas off. And sometimes I give them advice as well. And I like that process. Like, I'm not a service guy. You will not see me hang out at a party having a drink. That's just not me. I like to go deep. Like, you want to talk about something deep? You want to kind of talk about life, talk about business, talk about growth, talk about contribution? I'm your guy. You want to kind of chit chat, talk about the weather? I'm just not your guy.
And Dan, how did you develop that entrepreneurial mindset and this deep interest in such a wide variety of topics?
I would say I got into business by accident because when I immigrated to Canada when I was 14 years old. And so at the time I couldn't speak a word of English, didn't know anybody. And when I was 16 years old, my mom and dad got divorced. So as the only child in my family, I had to grow up and man up and take care of my family. And unfortunately, then my dad went bankrupt in Hong Kong in a couple of years later after the divorce. So then I had to just take care of my mom. So I got into business by accident. Money never interested me that much, but I had to my family. So I got into business just to provide for my family. I know back then if I was working in a job, I couldn't provide for my family. And I wasn't very good academically. It wasn't like a student. I was basically a C minus student. And so I'm not going to be an athlete or anything like that. I'm not very tall. I'm not very fast. So the only option that I have left is to be an entrepreneur. I always say your adversity, whatever you're going through now, whatever tough times or nowadays everybody, sometimes I speak, I say, put up your hand if you come from a dysfunctional family, right? 9 out of 10. Everybody nowadays comes from a dysfunctional family. I said, your adversity is your greatest advantage. that whatever you're going through right now in life, looking back a few years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you would be thankful of what happened. When my dad went bankrupt, I was so angry. When my mom and dad got divorced, I was so resentful. I hated my dad. I didn't talk to him for a few years because I thought, how could you do this? And why would you do this to us? Looking back, that was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I would not be who I am today. I would not be the Dan Lok that I am today if my dad was well off or was, I had this perfect family. I wouldn't be 1/10 as driven as I am today. So I thank my dad. And after a few years of that, we talked and we connected, and our relationships, better than ever.
How did you continue to use those frustrations and those challenges that you overcame as fuel over the years? Because I think you said the resentment can sometimes turn into bitterness and it can be really disempowering. What did you tell yourself that made it empowering?
Because there's no point moaning about it. It just, what are you going to do? So you point your fingers. See, when people experience resentment, anger, is only because they point their fingers to something else, because they feel like something happens to me, that, we are suffering because of my parents, because of my environment, because of my situation, because of whatever it is. But versus whenever you blame external forces, external factors, you always feel like you have very little power, you have very little control. But when you look internally and say, you know what, that happened. Okay, what can I do? What do I need to fix? Who do I need to become? When you look internally, now you have some choices to make. You have some decisions to make. Okay, maybe, you know what, my dad went bankrupt. So what? So let me go out there and provide for my family. Let me be a better man so that I could take care of my mom. Let me be a smarter person, maybe become a better businessman. And as a result, it forces me to grow versus I think a lot of young people, they stay in their comfort zone. And they just like, well, here's what happens. And challenge is most of the time, and I have young people emailing me every day, right? Facebook. And most of the time I say they don't want it that bad. They actually don't want it that bad. They say they want it. They say, oh yeah, Dad, I want to have this. I want to have the life that I want. I said, but your actions don't reflect that. When you are spending, 2 hours playing Pokemon Go, that's not how it works. When I was going through college, the first 5 years when I was building my company, I didn't take one single day, not one single day off the first 5 years. I killed myself, right? I didn't go to one single party, not one, in 5 years. I was working every day, 10, 12 hours every day, 7 days a week for 5 years so that I could have the life that I have. Now, looking back, all my friends, some of my, college buddies, partying and this and that and drinking and all of that. And after they graduated, guess what? Where they're working, where they're at now. So I paid the price early on and I made a decision to pay the price. And so I'm glad I did because that bought me a lot of time. That even though I'm at 34 years old, I've done a lot of things, a lot of goals I set for myself early on. Early on in my early 20s, I set a goal to accomplish, I learned that from Mark Victor Hansen from Chicken Soup for the Soul, that you need to set 100 goals that you want accomplished. And when I said that, in my 20s, I've accomplished a lot of them, probably 80 somewhat of them. And I set another 100, then I accomplished a lot of those as well. And so I'm glad I paid a price. So there's a pay price to action. You want something, you got to give up and sacrifice something as well.
I love that all of this came from the mindset that even though taking responsibility for where you are in life can be kind of stressful for some people, but we're looking at it from the lens of empowerment and how taking that responsibility empowers you and gives you so many more opportunities and options. And you said, okay, instead of, hanging out in this sort of victim mindset and feeling totally powerless, I'm going to set these goals for myself. I'm going to achieve X, Y, Z. And then once you did that, you showed yourself how incredibly powerful you actually were in that. And then we're able to continue and grow and grow. That's amazing.
I'll give you a perfect example. When I was going to high school, Basically, I had no friends. I was what you would call the invisible kid. That I would sit in the very back of the classroom. I would never put up my hand, never ask any questions. And I was the guy that you would go through a few semesters and you don't know my name. I was invisible. And I would, when I finish class, I would just grab my backpack and I wouldn't even talk to people and look them in the eyes. I was a very introvert, very shy, very afraid to talk because I was afraid to look stupid because I couldn't speak and I couldn't understand. And I remember when I was at grade 11, I had to deliver a speech for my English class. And I would skip the class and I would hide in the bathroom. Just imagine that. Because I was so afraid. I was so afraid. And that held me back in life. And until I got to a point where, you know what? I got to do something about this. I cannot let this thing stops me from being who I'm capable of being. So then I joined Toastmasters. You know, Toastmasters is a nonprofit and you learn to develop your leadership ability and your speaking ability. And I joined Toastmasters and I was showing up every single week. At first I was so afraid and I was doing my speech and it was horrible. But you know what? I kept showing up every week. I do a little something. Maybe it's a table topic. Maybe it's a prompt speech. Maybe it's a humor speech, whatever it is. First, because in Toastmasters, they give you these little feedback form. So after you speak, the people would give you, hey, some feedback, what you can do to improve. Now, after 6 months of that, people are writing down, oh, excellent, outstanding, amazing, you are natural. I look at those forms and said, there's nothing natural about what I'm doing. What's so natural about it? It's not natural at all. And then suddenly people say, oh, you're very good at this. Dan, that you have a gift. Oh, give me a break. I have a gift, right? And so then I said, you know what? But at the time I was studying all these great motivational speakers like Les Brown and Tony Robbins and all these great speakers that just inspire me because I want to learn from them. And I thought to myself, you know what? What if one day I could do that I could be up there on stage and inspire a lot of people? I just had that thought. And I went home and talked to my mom. I said, Mom, you know what? Someday I'm going to be a professional speaker. I remember my mom was in the kitchen and she was just washing her dishes. She looked at me, she turned and she looked at me and said, go do your homework. She went back washing the dishes, right? And when I shared that goal with people, I'm going to be a professional speaker and inspire people. Guess what kind of comment I was getting? Who do you think you are? You're too young. You're Chinese. You speak with an accent. No. It's no. Why would people come and listen to you? Think about it. Just think about it. And then I've there are no mainstream speakers that are Chinese. Hello? There isn't one. It cannot be done. It's never been done. Fast forward today. Earlier this year, I spoke at TEDx Stanley Park in front of 2,600 people. November, in a couple months, I'm going to speak at TEDx SFU. That's the Simon Fraser University in here, to a group of young people, probably 500 people or so. Just fast forward today, that it goes to show you, it doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter you missed the mistakes that you made. If you want it bad enough, and you're willing to work for it, you could get it.
So how does it feel now to go from the invisible boy to Dan the man?
It still sometimes is a disbelief. Sometimes before I go on stage or before I go on an interview, that sometimes I hear the introduction and I'm like, oh, is that me?
That sounds familiar.
That's okay. My writer, my PR person, they write a bio, all that. But I'm like, oh, is that really me? That is me. And so basically, I look at that as, you know what? Feel like to talk about be yourself. I think that's not very accurate. I think you don't just want to be yourself. Because what if yourself is lazy? What if you have no ambition? What if you're not very productive? Well, you don't want to be yourself. You want to be your best self. Be the best self that you could ever be. So if I were just being myself, back then, I wouldn't accomplish much. I basically created and I constructed this Dan the man. I was Danny the boy. I constructed Dan the man. I shaped myself. I worked on my my mental skill, my mindset, my skill set, my communication skill, everything. Eliminate my defects. And I shape, it's like a sculpture, right? You sculpt yourself into, even your body, your spirit, everything into who you want to be so you can have the things that you want to have. So in order for me to impact a lot of people, to be a role model, I know I have to continue to grow. I look at what I've accomplished. You know what? Yesterday, all my accomplishment, all my past doesn't mean. I don't look at that. It doesn't mean anything. I look at future. I look at, okay, yesterday, to me, as far as I'm concerned, yesterday's accomplishment and success is my enemy. I don't look at that as, oh yeah, I'm comfortable, I'm good, I can take it easy and just, no, it's not what life is about. Life is about growth. Life is about contribution. Life is about, leaving a legacy. And I'm still young. Let's say 34 years old. I still have many years to go. If I can do this by the age of 34, what can I do by the age of, 44, 45, 55, 65? And that's how I look at it.
That drive and passion is incredible. And I'm just feeling amped up right now, just even listening to you talk about it. Was there a defining moment when you recognized or understood or saw yourself demonstrate this transition between sort of Danny the boy and Dan the man, when you knew, okay, now I just proved to myself that I've stepped in to who I am or who I want to be?
Blake, great question. I think people change because of two reasons, either desperation or inspiration. And at first it was desperation, because one turning point I clearly, vividly remember. I went home and my mom was talking on the phone with my dad, and she closed the door in the bedroom. And at the time I was living in a one bedroom apartment, and she was crying on the phone. And because at the time it's exactly, my dad was saying, I went bankrupt. I couldn't send, money to you guys anymore. You're kind of on your own. And my mom was crying, and I could hear it. She didn't know I could hear it. And I knocked on the door, and they finished the conversation. And my mom looked at me and said, I said, Mom, is everything okay? And she was trying to, wipe her tears. Oh, yeah, don't worry. It's fine. It's okay. But I could see she's like so scared. And that face, that look, that image burned into my mind. I'm like, you know what? I'm never, ever want to see that look on my mom's face again. It's okay to let myself down. It's not okay to let my family down. That I don't care whatever it takes. So that's why when I went into the business world, cold calling, rejections, people say no, people whatever, it doesn't bother me. I think of that image of my mom's face. So reject me 100 times. You reject me 500 times. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't hurt my personal feeling, because my personal feeling ain't as important as my mom's feeling. That drove me. From there, it's more in the beginning to prove to the world that who I am and what I am capable of. And the funny thing is, I think for the first 10 years of my life, because of that incident, at first when I was making, good money, I was, getting a new car every year, and I was, going out with, quote unquote friends. They're not actually friends, but with friends, right? And we would go out there and we'll have dinner, and we would blow like $3,000 on a night. And I don't even freaking drink. That's the issue. I don't drink. And we blow through, and I'll pay for everything. I pay for the travel, pay for vacation, because I was trying to buy love. I was trying to buy attention. I was trying to buy someone, because I had no friends, keep in mind, when I was young. So I thought that's what you need to do to buy friendship. Now, of course, as you know, if you need to spend money to get those friendships, those are not true friends. But I didn't know better. So the first 10 years of my career as a business person, that I was more, I'm not proud of it, but I was more self-centered. I was more selfish. It was about the money. It was about the accomplishment. It was achievement. It's about whatever it takes. It's about getting deals done and making as much money as possible. It's about profit. Profit's the only thing. And that's how I operated for the first 10 years of my life. Now, did that work for me financially? Yes, it did. But horrible spiritually. Because by the age of when I turned 30, so motivated by desperation, now I want to prove to the world how smart I am. Look at the car that I drive. Look at this. Look at what I have done. And then when I hit 30 years old, one day I wake up in the morning. At the time, my fiance, now my wife, Jenny, and she came to the room and wake up in the morning, and tears were coming down my cheek. I was just crying. And my, Jenny was like, what's going on, Dan? Why are you crying? I said, I don't know. It just, tears were just pouring, that just like I was bawling, and I felt so depressed. I've never been depressed, even through tough times, but I was so depressed. I was so empty, and I didn't know why, because then later on I figured out, because I figured out I was pretty good at the achievement thing, very lousy at the fulfillment thing, that I worked so hard to accomplish all these things, and I'm not happy, and I didn't know why. And that's when I hit 30 years old that I shift completely to, you know what, it's not so much about me, what I've accomplished, what I can own, what I can buy, what would people think, and all these things. Is more now, okay, what can I do for others? What can I do? So imagine for the first, before 30 years old, it's all my companies, I own 100%. After 30 years old, every single company that I have now, it's all partnership. I don't do anything on my own anymore. It's all about helping others, working with mentees, helping business partners, helping them grow, impacting the world, doing interviews and things like that, that I would block out a certain amount of my time to give back and share my story and my knowledge with the world. And hopefully that resonates with some people and that inspires some people. So that's so far my journey. And I'm not proud to admit it, but I learned through the experience for sure.
That's such an important thing to share. Thank you, first of all, for sharing such an incredibly vulnerable moment. But I think so often we get many messages on a daily basis in our society that says, if you just make enough money, you will be happy, because then you can buy anything that you don't currently have that's making you unhappy. And hearing you talk about the realization of, striving and working so hard and overcoming all the things you did to get to that moment, and realizing actually money doesn't make you happy.
No.
And money doesn't, like you said, buy love or connection.
No. And money is not supposed to make you happy. I think money is supposed to do two things and two things only. Number one, money is supposed to it will give you comfort. You have more choices. You have, shelter, food, vacation, on comfort. And second thing, I think money allows you to extend the goods that you do beyond your physical presence. That's it. Those are two things. And it's a vehicle, it's a tool. So it's how you use it. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I like nice things. I mean, I live in a great home and everything. And so I think at first, I say to all my young mentees as well, I said, don't get a fast car, don't get a sport car. But they will do that, I know, because they have to go through that. They have to get that out. I said, don't buy the Ferrari, man. But Dan, it's so good. I want to do, okay, fine. I said, go through that, get that out of your system. And then now you'll mature, and then that doesn't, because whatever goal you have, let's say you want to get that fast car, guess what? You drive there for a month, you're like, nah. You'll be excited for about maybe a week, maybe a month. That's about it. Now it's like, okay, what? Okay, let me buy the next one. Okay, get the next one. Now what? That's not the formula to fulfillment. You only experience fulfillment when you're growing and when you're helping others. And that's an emotion. It has nothing to do with anything that you own or possess. It's something you have to work on. And that's why one of my morning ritual I have, every single morning I get up, I go through what I call a attitude of gratitude in the morning, which is like a 12, 13-minute exercise. I will listen to a piece of music with my own voice. I actually upload that to YouTube. People can search on Dan Lok, attitude of gratitude. You listen to what I listen to every morning. And so I listen to that. I go through what I start the day with. What am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for that I have in my life? I start the day that way. Start the day with its gratitude, is joy. And that sets up the tone for the day. So the rest of the day, I'm happy, I'm productive, and it's awesome. Like people ask me, how are you? Like, people say, hey, how are you, Blake? Ivy, how are you, right? I always tell people, nothing to complain. Nothing to complain. Like life is pretty awesome to me, that I have the people in my life that, put it this way, I have friends who are financially much more successful than I am. They run $100 million company, $1 billion company. And when I have conversations with them, sometimes they're very, very envious of how I'm able to live the way I live. Not because, the money part, because the freedom that I have, that they look at me, because because they have deal with shareholders and all that stuff and people. They look at my life, the way I live. I have no one in my life, zero people in my life that I have to tolerate. Not one person. I don't have anything in my life. Like I don't have anyone in my life that if I don't want them there, they're not there. I'm working on what I'm working on. Like I love doing what I do. I'm not doing anything that I don't love to do. So, and my freedom, the schedule and the travel and everything. So I have a lot of autonomy, and that they envy that because, wow, shit. Like we sit down and we sometimes have lunch and they're on the phone. They got to do this, and they see my phone doesn't ring. My phone doesn't ring. And they're just like, how the do you do this? They are just puzzled by the whole thing. And I said, well, that's just the way I live. It's about living life on your own terms. And I can look them in the eyes and say, you know what? I live life on my own terms.
So since you had that realization roughly 5 years ago and started on a path deliberately about fulfillment, what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced and how have you overcome it?
I think at first it felt a bit different. It felt, okay, now, because you got to understand from a type A, because I believe in life we go through 4 stages. And this is something I learned from my friend, Peter Sage. In life, we go through 4 stages. The first stage is what I call life happens to me, the to me stage. The to me stage, meaning that life happens to me. I'm a victim. I have no control. It's the government. It's my friends. It's my parents. You're blaming everybody else. That's life happens to me. There's nothing I can do. Second stage is life happens by me stage, meaning I make it happen. I set goal. I take responsibility. I can conquer the world. I can make it happen. I can move the mountain, whatever it takes. And I think that's the first stage everyone listening to this needs to get to. Taking responsibility. Life happens by me. And I operate in that stage for many years. And then evolved into what I call third stage is life happens through me. Life happens through me, meaning that now you are letting go of the need to control the outcome. That you have this faith, you have this belief that, you know what, it's going to happen. It's like, I want to get into shape. I just know if I eat carefully, I show up at the gym every day, I work out, I put in my effort, I'm going to see some results. Now, when I'm going to see the results, I don't know. Is it going to be exactly 6 months from now I'm going to have a 6-pack abs? Maybe, maybe not. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. But you let go of the need to control. It's like the metaphor I use is like up in the river and you are on a let's say a kayak or something like that, and you're going down the river. Yeah, you might hit a stone, you might hit a little, bump here and there, and the stream of the river might take you to the left and you kind of want to go to the right. But knowing that if you kind of let go, eventually you'll get to the bottom of the river. Is that kind of belief. So that's life happens through me. And that's where now I mostly operate from, that third stage. And then of course the fourth stage is life as me, meaning that it's more very, very spiritual. It's the Buddha, the Jesus, an enlightened stage that you see everything as one. You see everything as energy. So that's a very spiritual stage. Sometimes through meditation, you might get there, get a glimpse of that. But mostly I operate from stage 3. But I think you do have to go through stage 1 and 2 to get to stage 3. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Because from my point of view, at first, I make it happen. I set goals. If I want to get this deal done, if the guy's not replying, I'm going to call him 10 times. And to adjust that and saying, you know what, maybe it's not meant to happen. Maybe I shouldn't do the deal. Maybe a better deal would come along. That at first, the challenge, it takes a little while to adjust. But once I totally got it, and when I let go of the need to control, stop being a control freak, things happen faster, easier, with less effort. Funny thing is, when I switched the approach, being less aggressive, you can even say less driven, goal driven. As driven, but not as goal driven. That I just kind of, okay, I set my goal. I have my direction. That's where I want to go. But I don't, like I said, impact million entrepreneurs worldwide. I don't have a timeline for that. I'm going to work on it for the rest of my life. When I'm going to get there, I'll know when I get there. That is very, very interesting. And so I find that that's what I've gone through, 4 stages of life.
That's fascinating. And the piece you talked about there just at the end, I want to drill down a little bit deeper because I'm curious how you have the discernment coming from someone who, like you said, you've just been on the grind for so many years and doing anything it takes, getting 100 rejections if you need to, or going through Toastmasters and just practicing over and over and over again. How do you have the discernment at this stage to know when something just requires that hard work and practice and the continual application over and over again, and when it's more of a, like you said, put this out there, but sort of sit back and see if it happens? How do you distinguish between those two? I won't say they're competing, but
they are.
In some ways it feels like they are. Yeah,
they are. Because on one hand, you want to strive to do your best and be your best. On the other hand, the other extreme is like, well, you know what? I'm not attached to the outcome. They are. But because I'm a martial artist, I like to use a lot of martial art metaphor. I've actually studied under two of Bruce Lee's original students. I'm a huge fan of Bruce Lee. And in martial art, it's like this. So Blake, imagine, let's say you want to learn karate. Well, you got to go through the grind. You got to practice. You got to master the basics, practice the form, learn how to punch, the mechanics, all of that, speed, power, timing, all of that stuff, footwork. Great. You got to master it. So first you got to learn it. Second stage, you got to master it. But in a self-defense situation, let's say someone attacks you, you're not going to go, okay, he's throwing a punch this way. Let me see, in class 365, my instructor taught me to block this way, and I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to counter that way. Not going to happen. It becomes part of who you are, then you got to forget it. You got to empty your cup. You got to let it go. You got to let your instincts take over. So, well, how do you know it would work? Well, it all goes back to how hard did you train back then, right? So you got to learn it, master it. So don't try to get to stage 3 before you go through stage 2. I could get to stage 3 because I've spent years at stage 2, honing my skills, honing my craft, that I know now I got the skills, I have my tools. So it requires less of that, right? It's more now just thinking and less manual labor, if that makes sense.
So putting in the hard work to get to the mastery. Put in the hard work
first. You got to earn the right. I always say you don't just get rich. You have to earn the right to be rich. Earn the right to be successful first. Go through all the, you know what, because of those rejections, I know how to sell. I know how to market. I know how to communicate. When you don't even have those basic skills in the business world and say, now, I'm going to be, do all these things. Well, you're not going to make it because you don't have that foundation. So the foundation has to be strong. And unfortunately, a lot of times I see people that when I even speak to young people, say, they want to change the world. They want to save the world. I say, how about you save yourself first? How about you move out of your parents' basement first? How about you make enough money so you can survive, so you can take care of yourself, take care of people around you? Let's do that first. Then, go ahead, build a business, save the world. I'm 100% supportive. But we have to take responsibility and do that first. Because I don't want that to be an escape or an excuse and say, I want to help others. Sometimes they say, I want to help other people. I said, you don't. It's a lie. I look at you. You don't want to help other people. You can't even help yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't even have the self-discipline to manage yourself properly. Don't tell me you want to help other people. Be a role model. Be successful first. Then you can help out others in a much bigger way. Much, much bigger way. You want to give blood? Don't just give blood. Because if you give blood, you give how many bags of blood you can give before you pass out? 1, 2. Well, you want to give blood? Entrepreneurial thinking? Build a hospital. Build a hospital, right? And that's a difference between an entrepreneurial mindset versus an employee mentality.
So in addition to this advice, what other pieces of wisdom do you share with other millennials or people who are on their path toward fulfillment and success?
I think early on, I was fortunate to know, because sometimes I do realize that millennials, they might not know. Sometimes you ask them, like, what do you want in life? And sometimes they do have challenges answering that. I see that a lot. That after graduate from university, what do you want to do? And you see most of the time, they're like, I'm not so sure. I don't know. Maybe I try this. Maybe I try that. I think early on, I think it's very, very beneficial to figure out what do you like to do and what you don't like to do, and what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. The school system is designed to kind of put us in a certain way, academic intelligence, or in a certain way, create employees, of course. But what I'm saying is, if you know your strengths, if you early on, you work on those and focus on those. I have a saying, if you spend your life working on your weaknesses, at the end of your life, you have a lot of strong weaknesses. Okay. So it's better you figure out your strengths early on. And most of us are only good at a handful of things. When you know what, I'm good at 2 or 3 things. Well, put all your energy and effort, make that world class. Be the very best at that thing, that couple of things. And from there, and now it's just a question of how do you turn that skill, how do you turn your gift, your talent, and serve the world in a bigger way, and you will experience the success. It's very, very simple. So early on, knowing what you want. Now, if you don't know what you want, a very helpful exercise is to figure out exactly what you don't want. That might be a good starting point. If you know what, I don't want to commute to work. I don't want a 9-to-5. Okay, good. That's a good starting point. Or I don't like to wear a tie. Well, good. Start with that. That corporate world probably not for you, right? I don't want to be stuck in a cubicle. I want to travel the world. Well, that's a good starting point. So that would affect your career choice. That would affect your profession choice versus, well, that's what my friends are doing. That's what my parents want me to do. Forget that stuff. Put that aside for a second. This time it's good to be a little bit selfish, because sometimes you have to be selfish before you can be generous. Be selfish first. That, you know what, this is my life. I'm in charge. This is what I want. That's what I don't want. Start with that. This is what I'm good at. Okay, let me make that stronger. When I learned that speaking, as I develop my skill, that I am getting better and better, that I have a way of resonating with people, that people resonate with my story, or it's just somehow the way I communicate. I'm like, that's interesting. Let me make that stronger. And I've been working on my skill for now a decade now. And guess what book I'm reading this week?
What is it?
Public speaking.
Perfect.
Just think about it. So I wanted, that's my axe. I'm sharpening my axe, and I make my strength stronger and stronger and stronger. It's not, I don't work on my weaknesses. I delegate my weaknesses.
So I have a question about sort of distinguishing a weakness from a skill that you just might not have honed yet. Because when you were sharing your story about joining Toastmasters, you kind of mentioned that it was a surprise that people were saying to you that it was a gift because you didn't necessarily feel like it was. And so how in that moment, speaking wasn't necessarily a weakness of yours, but was something that you had a skill for, but just needed to practice more?
Correct. It wasn't a weakness. It was something that was holding me back. I think one of the things I did early on, there's a book out there called Strengths Finder 2.0.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Strength Finder 2.0. I recommend anybody to go get that book. With the book, it comes with a test. And you can take that test online for, I think, 10, 20 minutes, and it will tell you your top 5 strengths. What are they? And kind of what you need to focus on. So that's very helpful. So definitely do that. When it comes to skill set, to succeed in the world, the number one skill that you need is people skill. So definitely read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie, but it's people skill. Unfortunately, as you know, with technology and Facebook, the other day I was in a restaurant and you see a group of people, they're just on their phones. Like it's a group of friends, but everybody's on their phone and they don't talk anymore. Right? They're probably texting each other. and unfortunately, because of technology, and I love technology, I use technology, but we don't communicate. We don't know how to talk to people anymore. And at the end of business is about people. Anything that you want in life, somebody else has it. Somebody else has it. It's like growing up. Our parents teach us what? Don't talk to strangers. Right? Guess what? In business, you don't talk to strangers, you'll go broke.
That's so true.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
Don't toot your own horn. Don't stand out. Well, in business, if you don't stand out, you go out of business. Okay, you don't make yourself unique, you go out of business. So it's that type of mentality, right? Oh, in school, same thing. It's, in exam time, well, if I were to talk to Billy next to me, hey, Billy, do you know the answer? It's called cheating. In business, it's called teamwork. So it's quite different what happens in the business world. So that's what I mean. People skill that we have to work on, how to talk to people. Unfortunately, I think nowadays, more and more people hide behind the computers. I'll tell you a quick story. Many years ago, when I was building my internet company and I was talking to my mentor, and my mentor was just kicking my ass, and we would have this conversation. He said to me, Dan, he said, no successful people will deal with you if you hide behind your computers. The high performance people, they don't do business through email. They do business face to face on the phone. You better get good at that. And at the time, I didn't quite get what he was saying because I was like, nah, I can do it. I'm making good money behind my computer. I don't talk to nobody. It was a huge mistake. I wish, if there's one thing I would have wished I had changed, it's I would have gone out there and meet a lot more people, because one relationship, one conversation could change your life. One relationship. People say, it's not what you know, who you know. Well, there's some truth to that. That having that right connection, if I haven't met my mentor, I wouldn't be where I am today. I haven't met the people that I'm working with. It's all face to face. Now, after face to face, through email communication, all that is okay. But I think we all need to work on our people skills. Just don't hide behind the computer. Don't stay in our own little world. Just the world's so much bigger. Travel, talk to people, experience things. Talk to people that might intimidate you. Good. Don't talk to people that you're comfortable with. Show me your friends. I show you your future. And that's a terrible way of just think. Look at the reality, the truth. Show me your friends. I'll show you your future. Oh my God. If you look at the 5 people that the closest you hang out with, maybe it's time to change some friends.
Is there a conversation that you've had, Dan, that's really changed your life? Like you mentioned, one conversation, one relationship can really just change your life.
Going back to high school, I will share with you that I was hiding in the bathroom. I would skip the class. That's the second part of that story. Because at the time, my high school teacher, Miss Fallon, she said to me, kind of asked me to go to her office and say, Dan, I know you skipped the speaking portion of it. You had to do a speech. And she said, Dan, I can't let you pass the program, the course, if you don't deliver that speech. And I said, I can't do it. I said, I just can't do it. She said, Dan, just get up there. If you do it, even if you not good or terrible, doesn't matter. I'll let you pass. You just have to do it. And I said, I can't do it. She said, why don't you come to my office after class and we'll rehearse, we'll practice. And we wrote a little script and I practiced. I still remember I went up there and did my thing. My knees were knocked, just locked, right? And my hands were shaking uncontrollably, right? Mm-hmm. My face was pale and, sweat was, my shirt was, just wet. I read through the whole thing. Basically, I was like, hi, my name is, I read through like a robot, right? I went through that and a couple of people be polite and they kind of applaud, claps and that's nice. And I finished that. And afterwards, Miss Fallon said to me, so you did it. I said, yeah, but it was so bad. It's no good. And I feel so embarrassed. They probably think I'm an idiot. And I was grade 11, right? And she said something to me, said, you know what? It doesn't matter. You did it. You did it. And that, I think, planted a seed in my mind. That's why later on I joined Toastmasters, that someone... It's not so much the conversation, it's the incident. I think we all need someone in our lives who believe us more than we believe in ourselves. Mm. So Miss Fallon believed in me more than I believed in myself. Never thought I could do it. But she said, you could do it. Just let me help you. I could do it. You could do it. So after I did it, okay, maybe I could do it. I don't know. So whatever you're trying, just having someone believing in you, I think that's very, very key. That try something new. Hey, you know what? I didn't think I could do this. I just did it. Maybe I'm more. Maybe I could do more. Maybe I'm capable of more. And that starts on your path, right? So having someone believing in you, it's very, very key. Especially we haven't had the credentials at a young age. We haven't had the experience yet. But if someone believes in you, hey, you know what? You can do this. That I believe that you can do this. Well, maybe I could. Because other people's validation to most people is still quite important.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Would you mind sharing where our audience can find you and your work online?
Yeah, I would say just Google me, Dan Lok, DANLOK. If they can't find stuff about me, we need to talk. we have a bigger problem, right? But I think the best way is for me to impact people, to learn from me. Just go to YouTube. I mean, I have 400 videos on YouTube. I'm still posting videos all the time. That would be the main channel that I would kind of share my story and my work. So just YouTube, Dan Lok, hundreds of videos that you can watch, learn from that. Let me be your little virtual mentor if you want to be, and just learn from that and learn it at your own pace. I think you hear some stories or even other people's stories, something might resonate, something might click, and you might make some different decisions. And if you do make some changes, leave me a comment, post and send me a quick email. I save all of those. People ask me all the time, Dan, your goal is to impact 1 million entrepreneurs. How do you know that you've done it? How do you know? And does that mean you have 1 million followers? Does that mean you have 1 million subscribers on YouTube? Or does that mean you speak to 1 million people? Like, what does that look like? I said it's very simple. Every single time I get a thank you comment, every single time I get a thank you email, every time I get a thank you card, I would print it out. I would put it in my what I call gratitude box. It's a pretty big box. And every time I get some of those, I print it out, put it in the box. That's considered one impact. And once I've accumulated 1 million of those, that's when I know I've done it. And I tell my wife, it's very simple. When I die, I go, please, burn that, bury me with those ashes, because that's my legacy. That's what I've done. I've tried my best and did what I could to kind of, it sounds a little cliche, but make the world a little bit better, a better place. And that's my legacy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful. And we really appreciate you being here today to, share some of this wisdom and, be making impact on entrepreneurs through the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm so excited. And I hope your listeners maybe take a couple tips from it. Maybe it's a strength finders, maybe a couple things, but do something. Mm-hmm. Don't just listen to the podcast. Take just one idea and say, I'm going to try that. That's all I'm asking. Take one idea and say, I'm going to try that. Just one little thing, that one little step, and then take the next little step, In a few years, you'll be surprised where you get to.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Consulting Services. We work with organizations and teams to develop millennial leaders by understanding and tapping into millennial skills and values. In short, we strive to enrich organizations one millennial at a time. To learn more about our customized offerings, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/consulting.
Welcome to the after show of our conversation with Dan Lok. He is a fascinating individual. Really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, it was really good. He has some amazing, incredibly unique perspective, right? On the world and on journeys and on relationships and everything. So yeah, it was absolutely a pleasure.
There are so many things that I could talk about, but one of the things he said that I liked the most was this idea of don't just be you, be the best you.
Yeah.
Which I think is important to distinguish from being the perfect you. Because I think when I hear that, I immediately think, oh, well, the best me works 16 hours a day, but also eats a balanced breakfast and happens to exercise on a regular basis,
Like, you're saying that that's the perfect you.
Right.
Yeah, this sort of unobtainable version.
Yeah, if I don't distinguish between the best me and the perfect me. Yeah.
Okay, how do you what's the best you then?
So I think the best you is about being present and self-aware. So the present part is about in this moment, what do I have the capacity for to be the best me? And we surprise ourselves. Sometimes we don't think we can do things that we actually can, but sometimes we do. There are times when pushing yourself out of your comfort zone really helps you get what you want or experience something new and incredible. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, pushing yourself past a healthy limit can just drain you or injure you or wear you out. And so I think the discernment and the wisdom in the moment is thinking, okay, what do I have capacity for? Or maybe even what am I drawn towards most right now? That's more of knowing what to do in the moment than necessarily how to be. But I think that's where it ties in with self-awareness, because self-awareness helps us recognize here are things that are helping me reach the outcome I want, and here are things that are hindering me. And sometimes, ironically, it's named self-awareness, but I think we need other people to help us see that, because so often it could be things that Josh Shipp, motivational speaker, calls a Waldo, which are the things everyone else can see, but we can't see. And I think a lot of my mother, who was assistant director of social services, and she, when coaching people, would have to help them see their Waldos a lot of the time, because they'd be doing things or expressing patterns or whatever that would be really distracting or hindering them from getting the things that they wanted. And an example of this would be grammar. And obviously, there's a very subjective argument about whether grammar really matters or not. Clarity of communication, blah, 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 cultural expectations. But at the end of the day, for this specific job, grammar made a difference. And so my mother would always have to coach people from the perspective of, you have told me that you want to advance in this position. The grammar that you've been using is holding you back from that. And so I'm here to support you in helping you get the thing you say you want. Now, if you don't want that or you're okay with that, that's okay. You can tell me that. But if you do, here's a way that can help. And that's a very vulnerable and challenging conversation to have. But I think it can be really powerful and a gift, because it's something that other people are seeing, but we might not be able to see.
Well, and it's great, too, to have people in your life, like Dan mentioned, who see something even greater for you than you might see for yourself. That's one of the things that I absolutely love the most about coaching, is that I get to hold a bigger self for my client. So there is a combination between really knowing yourself and, like you said, having that awareness to know, when am I pushing myself too hard, and when am I actually underestimating my capacity and my value. And so it can be really helpful to have people in your life who can reflect back what this concept of your best self is, right?
Yeah, there's no right answer. I think that's the interesting thing. And that's why...
No, yeah, very subjective, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why we can surprise ourselves, because you'll hear all the time people saying, I never even thought I could do that, until I was either forced to by the circumstances or because, like you said, someone coached or encouraged me to do that. And one of the things in doing the hip-hop motivational work in schools that I've really seen be powerful is helping kids create that identity that is more than what they have seen in their immediate surroundings or that other people might have told them they're capable of. If you say, I believe that you can be a leader, you are very supportive of people, you're charismatic. Sometimes kids might not even see that in themselves because they might just think, oh, I need to be in control or dominant. Like, you can reframe even a bully to use some of the things that in this context are harmful. You can flip it and say, these are skills that if you apply them for a different purpose can be fantastic. Now, I'm not obviously a bullying expert or would advocate that as a solution to bullying, but I think it's all about giving kids an alternate identity that helps them be their best self.
Well, no, I think that's the tool that we can use in our own lives as well, because what Dan talked about after he was talking about the best self was how he was crafting Dan the man. And that made me think of the fact that for us to move forward and for us to grow and achieve and be our quote unquote best self, we have to have some kind of vision about what that is. And we have to take steps toward it and believe it's possible, even when we don't have any evidence to support that in our current lives. And it reminded me of the work of Mary Morrissey in Prosperity Plus, because she talks about, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this is how I took her wisdom and applied it to my own life, which was, what will the version of Ivy that's like the best version of Ivy or whatever like that. I'll give you a specific example because this is really abstract. So like when I was moving out here from Arkansas to Berkeley, California area, I was terrified all the time. It was just a very anxiety inducing experience just because there was a lot of change and all of that. And so in the morning I would wake up, and even though I was feeling incredibly terrified, I would think to myself, what would incredibly courageous and brave and clear-headed Ivy do today? And that's what I would do. And that's ultimately how I ended up being courageous and brave. Because even though I didn't feel that way, so it's like if I woke up and I'm like, what would Yogi Ivy do today? Yogi Ivy would get up and do a little bit, and it just, over time you take those steps, and that's where the crafting comes in, because you're taking those steps with the view of what that person in the future would do or would be like, and then you eventually become that person. It's like kind of abstract, but that's...
Yeah, and you have to reinforce it. Like you said, every morning you wake up, what would incredibly courageous and brave and clear-headed Ivy do?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we say, oh, well, being the best me, I should be able to do just in any given moment, no matter what the circumstances or my energy level or whatever. And I don't necessarily think that's fair to ourselves. I think reminding ourselves who that person is and why we want to be that and why it matters to us is really important. And I know for me, even like going out and taking a 30-minute run and listening to Tony Robbins on audiobook, or listening to music, or listening to some of my old music that I really love and thinking, oh yeah, like this is the kind of stuff that I can crank out. That doesn't make me weak for not being able to just generate it from my mind any given moment. Sometimes we need something to trigger us or to encourage us. I think it varies for different people. Mm-hmm. So what was one of your big takeaways, in addition to some of the things you've already talked about, from Dan?
So I really liked listening to the 4 stages that he described: the life happening to you, life happening by you, life happening through you, and then as you. I can definitely relate to being in the by you / through you phase right now. I really feel like I'm like transitioning into the through you phase, because most of my life has been the by you phase, because I saw really early on what having that sort of victim mindset could do to you and to do to your life. And so by the time that I was in my early 20s, I let go of that for the most part. I mean, I honestly think that a large part of me was the Bayou perspective, right? Like I just felt, I was really like needing to be in control of things and wanting to do my best and doing my best and achieving and all of that. Like that's just been something that has been a part of me for a long time. And it has actually been a part of my spiritual practice to move into this phase 3. And it's something that I've been working through very recently, actually, which is coming to terms with the fact that you really are only in control of so much. And, we did an interview with someone, Shanri, who talked a little bit about the dancing metaphor, and we talked about that. And so that's very similar to what I'm thinking about right now, which is that life is like a dance with the universe, and that the universe is the lead and you are the follow. And even though sometimes the lead takes you in a way that you don't think you're going to, you end up with this really beautiful dance, and that being a follow is also about having some authorship and some ownership as well. And so for me, that's stage 3 as life going through you, for me, a very spiritual perspective, because I think of the book by Michael Singer, which is called The Surrender Experiment, which is something new that I'm currently exploring and reading. And it's talking about exactly that, which is doing what you can and then releasing the outcome, taking action and taking steps forward and releasing the outcome, and how much amazing, beautiful things can happen when you have that sort of perspective.
So what does it look like for you when you're letting life be through you rather than by you? Like, is there an example of one way you'd approach a problem or a situation if life is by you that you'd approach differently if life is through you?
Yeah, so I would say the most recent business example, I have like personal examples that I could go into, but the most recent business type example is around getting coaching clients for the certification program that I'm a part of. Because from the very early stages, I had a couple of people and I knew that I needed several more to be a part of the program. And they laid out this process and they give you advice and all of that. But from my perspective, I only have 2 people. Oh my gosh, I'm going to freak out. And if I had gone into that whole process with I'm going to force this to happen. I am desperate and I am going to make this happen because it needs to happen and it needs to happen exactly this way, that desperation would have come out. Instead, I approached it as trust the process, like trust the universe, like just take these steps forward and like be really present, so that in each like sample session that I gave, I wasn't approaching it like, oh my gosh, I need this person to say yes. I was approaching it as I am going to be present with this person. I'm going to provide value to this person, and whatever happens is going to happen, and just like releasing the outcome of that action rather than trying to force the outcome of that action. So it was just a much more wholesome experience and ultimately resulted in many more people signing up than they would have if I had come into it with this feeling of like, I need, and it became about me instead of about them. And ultimately trusting the process, trusting the universe, and like coming from that orientation was just a much more enjoyable experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, you don't put so much pressure on yourself either.
Yeah.
And that's, Dan talked about the exercise example of, look, you try to get 6-pack in 6 months or whatever, and you just go to the gym and you eat right and you trust the process. And you know what? If it takes 6 months, if it takes 9 months, like, you don't know it, but that's okay. Because you could sit there and say, oh my gosh, why don't I have a 6-pack yet? Why don't I have 6-pack yet? And you could really drive yourself crazy and frustrate yourself. I think it's exactly the same thing in business, in life. I mean, one of the things that I remember in high school was thinking, oh, I really wish I had a girlfriend. Oh, I really wish I had a girlfriend. And then, like, finally, senior year, I was like, fine, I'm okay just not having a girlfriend. And then, like, a week later, I had a girlfriend. And I'm not saying it's, like, magic or whatever, but I think you're right. Like, the vibes you are giving off sometimes, we might not even be aware of, like, there's that sort of, that neediness. And in any situation, just being able to release the outcome also makes us more adaptable, because sometimes we see opportunities that weren't even in front of us, because all of a sudden our vision is expanded, because we're not thinking this is the only way this can happen. Like, here's another thing I wouldn't have even considered. So yeah.
Well, and what we're not saying is that you should just not care about what happens to you in your life or whatever. Like, that you just don't give a crap or whatever. And it's like, I'm just going to do X and we'll just see what happens. It's more about releasing the pressure on yourself and the pressure on the situation. Because when you do that, you're, like you said, you're more likely to take action. It seems contrary. It seems like if you put a lot of pressure on yourself and you're like beating yourself to death with a whip or whatever, like, that's how it feels sometimes when you're hard on yourself, like internally, then you're going to have more of an outcome. You're going to like get more done or whatever is going to happen. But in reality, it's like, if you are just going, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to take this step forward, you're going to end up with things that surprise you about what you're capable of and what other people are capable of, and like just surprise you about life. And then you might end up totally in a different place than you had specifically anticipated. And that's what releasing the outcome is about. Because when you move forward on your journey, you're going to have setbacks. Things are going to turn out in a way that you totally didn't expect them to do. But then in hindsight, you're like, holy crap, that's exactly what I needed to happen. You know? So you're allowing life to go through you instead of trying to like force it by like strangling yourself or strangling like, you know, thoughts or whatever it is you're putting so much pressure on.
Yeah, it's pull versus push. And I remember that even from the music industry days when I was just starting out managing and producing for this artist in England. And we were like just pushing and pushing, like contacting people and trying to make things happen. And then we got a hit single on iTunes and the radio. It was on this commercial. And all of a sudden, everything was pulling. And I could just, the energy shift was amazing. Like we were just being pulled. There was opportunities, you know, creating in front of us. And I just remember thinking that is the goal with any kind of business or personal thing, is to be in that place where you are being pulled so that you don't even have to pressure yourself, because you just look at what's in front of you and say, okay, here's the next action I need to take versus I need to take the next action. It's really subtle, because I definitely resonate with what you're saying. And I read all these crazy business books that make me feel like I should be beating myself up all the time to be the perfect version of me, coming back to where we started. And I think releasing that actually helps me be the best version of me.
Yeah. And like, how can you have that mentality now? Like this present moment, literally right now, like how can you release that and go, this is what I need to do next, you know, or this is what I'm doing now and this is what I need to do next. Like how can you release that despite what your external circumstances are?
Well, I think the next thing to do is say thank you so much to our amazing listeners. And we hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dan. We really appreciate him being on, and we hope you'll tune in with us next week on the Motivational Millennial Podcast.
Bye.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!